all the right marketing, ladies and gentlemen, where we talk with business owners and industry leaders about marketing their products and really getting their messages out in the world, because there are many ways to do that. So with us today, we have Kelly, and so excited to have Kelly DiPucchio with us today. She's a New York Times bestselling author of over 30 picture books for children. She travels the country speaking to kids about the importance of kindness, overcoming adversity, and personal empowerment. I knew of Kelly, I believe, when I was a teacher. So I taught for many years, and I don't know which book would have been one of your first books that I was reading to my students, but my first graders loved your books. So thank you for being with us today, Kelly.
Well, thank you. And thank you for inviting me into your space today. It's great to talk to you and connect with you again after all these years.
Absolutely. And we're both in Michigan, which is really cool, right? You're still in Michigan?
I am, yeah, born and raised here.
Enjoying the summer months. So let's go back a little ways. I want to know where it all began with you. Were you an educator before you started writing picture books?
Well, I went to Michigan State University, and I actually had a degree in child psychology, and I worked in foster care. So a lot of my background has always been with children, but I never thought about, writing books for children until I had children of my own. I've always been a big reader and a writer ever since I was a kid. I always loved books. It was just something that I don't know, I didn't dare to dream that big, that I thought that this was something I could actually do with my life.
So what was one of the first books that came out? I'm trying to think.
It was actually back in 2004. It was Bed Hogs.
Okay.
That was the first one with Disney Hyperion. And it was based off basically my life, which was being sleep deprived for many, many years, because I had 3 kids who never wanted to sleep and were, always up in the middle of the night. And so they say, write what you know, and that's what I did. I turned it into a book called Bed Hog.
We were chit-chatting a little bit before the interview. Tell me a little bit about what sometimes wakes you up in the middle of the night.
Well, I like to call myself clairaudient, clairaudient skills, but really and truly, we all have this ability, and I just kind of call it inspiration, right? But when you say you have clairaudience, it makes it sound a little more woo-woo. But yeah, I actually get woken up in the middle of the night, sometimes with story ideas. Sometimes I'll hear the first words of a story, a sentence. But I have what I call a cosmic DJ, which is very strange. I will wake up in the middle of the night or very early in the morning and hear a song. And sometimes it's just a few words of the song. Sometimes it's many lyrics of the song. But what's weird is that a lot of times I haven't heard the song in a long time. It's not like I was jamming to it on the radio in the car, and inevitably when I would go and look up the song, the lyrics, like somehow they would relate to my life or something that was happening in my world. And I thought I was like the only one this happened to, but I've talked to other people and they also have cosmic DJs. So, yes, I'm not sure like what the connection is or where this inspiration comes from, but actually like the word inspiration just comes from the Latin word inspiratus, which means to breathe life into or to breathe into. And so I really think all writers have this ability, where do our stories come from? Where are they? They're just not, I don't think it's just this neat brain in our head that this inspiration is coming from. So yeah, a lot of my stories have been inspired in some way by, I don't know, just these ideas that just come to us, right? I think all writers can speak to that.
I love that. I've interviewed some writers who've said, oh, I get my ideas on a walk, or I get my ideas in the shower, like driving in the car. So they come to us in different places. And I just had this vision of your story, Bacon, because that's a beloved story. One of your books in my household right now with my 8-year-old boy. He loves that story, Bacon. And I see, is that Gaston sitting on the couch behind you?
Yes, I have my big Gaston plush sitting there on the chair.
Awesome. So years and years of picture books. And I know a big part of what you were doing before the pandemic was speaking at schools. So if I were to ask you the question, how do you think most people hear about your stories? What would your answer be?
how do they hear about them, or?
Yeah, learn about what books you've written and, our approach.
Well, wonderful teachers, really, and librarians. Without them, I don't know where we would be. I think that's mainly the teachers who have a passion for books and reading and just share great stories with kids. So a lot of times that's how they're exposed to them, and just by teachers sharing books and finding ways to incorporate them into their lesson plans. It's all changed so much now because of, social media and, getting your books out there in different ways. And there's all kinds of different formats now, the ebooks and so it's interesting because I've been doing this for over 20 years, and the entire industry has changed completely in that 20 years, but even more so in the last couple of years through the pandemic. We've really had to adjust in terms of how we get our books out there and get them into the hands of kids, and because I'm not out there touring like I used to. Hopefully that'll be changing soon, but
yeah, and that was my next question, because I know, if you were to get in a school of 800 children, that's what, 2 hours, maybe one program, an hour-long program of hearing the messages in your story and hearing about your inspiration, where when the pandemic happened, that really came to a halt. So in what ways over the pandemic did that change for you? And is there anything that you learned in connecting with your readers through the pandemic that you would like to carry on post-pandemic? But I'm not sure if we're there quite yet.
We're getting there. We're getting really close.
We are.
Well, prior to the pandemic, I like to say BC, right? I was kind of one of these authors who was holding out, kicking and screaming, I'm not going to do Skype visits. I just had no interest in doing them. And I loved the connection of being face-to-face with kids and just having that, experience of reading directly from a book and seeing their expressions and feeding off their energy. And it's just a wonderful thing. So I kind of resisted that for a very, very long time. Well, then, of course, when the pandemic hit, that was the only way to reach our readers, was to do it virtually. So reluctantly, I decided, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And it actually, it's worked out great. I'm kind of glad in a way that it forced me out of my comfort zone to do this. And there were sometimes when I was on a call and I was speaking, there was one district in Texas, and there were like 4,000 kids on this call because, with technology, you can do this. And so it was amazing that how many people you can actually reach that way that maybe I wouldn't have been able to reach otherwise. So yeah, that's definitely been a big part of how I had to, as they say, pivot during the pandemic, is doing my virtual visits, and also the promoting, a lot of the bookstore events early on. I had 3 books come out during the pandemic. And so we were doing, partnering with bookstores and doing story times with them through their stores. And, it was challenging. It really was. And I really missed being able to sit there, and sign books for people after, book launch. I really missed that aspect of it. It wasn't quite the same, sending out, book labels but yeah, at least we were able to still connect with readers in just a different way.
And 4,000 children in one visit. That is amazing. And just as we're talking, because this is a podcast, but it also goes on YouTube, we just saw a little animal walk by your background. And 4 years ago, that would just be so like, oh, she has an animal in the background. And now we're like, oh yeah, this is normal. So who do we just see walk by?
Well, one of them's back. I actually have 3 dogs. I've three human children, but they all are grown and out of the house now. So I've since replaced all of my human children with fur babies. But yeah, and they often upstage me when I'm talking to kids online, because they will come in and they will do things. One time it was awful. One of my dogs started throwing up. Like, welcome to the new world.
Oh my goodness.
virtual
Oh,
visits.
oh,
And the
it's
kids
hey,
just thought it was hilarious. Of course, that's all they could talk about was,
I bet they went home and had stories around the dinner table. Um,
yeah.
so Kelly, now that we're kind of the world's changing a bit and things are getting back to our new normal, do you feel like do you still feel that reluctancy to virtual visits, or do you think you might still do some? Are you really wanting to go back in person? What are your thoughts?
Well, I definitely want to go back in person, but I will for sure continue with the virtual visits because, like I said, I'm getting older now, and like I love to go new places and see new things, but at the same time, a lot of these visits involve so much travel, different plane connections and renting cars and driving. And so sometimes I'd be traveling more than I was actually talking to kids.
Oh, I
And
can
so
imagine. Yeah.
that was like the challenging part of it. There were some years when I was just doing so many school visits and traveling so much, and quite frankly, just getting burned out from that aspect of it. I loved going into the schools and meeting the kids, but it was that travel was hard. So this has really opened some doors for me in terms of then maybe saying, well, I can't commit to traveling, but I can still offer you a virtual visit depending on, my schedule and the month. And so, yeah, I will definitely be doing the virtual visits moving forward. And it's kind of nice, I mean, we've all kind of learned to adjust in terms of working from our homes. And so it is kind of nice in the way, when I'm done with a visit, then I can just go have a cup of coffee or go sit on my patio with my dogs and relax and not have to like race to an airport because I'm worried about missing a flight.
Absolutely. And I saw on social media a couple days ago, bookstores. I saw a bookstore that I know of in California, and they're doing a virtual visit with an author who's on the East Coast. So I thought, oh, I didn't realize bookstores are going to continue that, but it sounds like they are. So I know listeners love to hear this question, and I don't think I prepared you, but what are you currently working on?
Ah,
Aha.
well, right now I'm actually in between projects, but I have 3 books coming out next year. So I'm kind of in the phase right now where I'm thinking about, promotion and what I'm going to do for those books and how that's going to look. But I recently finished writing the third Una book. Una is my mermaid series with HarperCollins. And the third book is called Una in the Arctic. And it was really fun to write. And because now with the third book, I really know these characters well. And Riza Figueroa is the illustrator, and she just does amazing art and illustrations. And so we kind of wrapped the text up for that and the art. And so that was kind of like my last project that I wrote. But I have some ideas in the back of my head. I'm when I have that inspiration, sometimes they're just little tiny seeds of stories. And I really have to wait and be patient with those seeds for them to germinate and grow and bloom, because if I rush it too soon, then I kind of find I run out of steam. So it's interesting how they will just sit with me and marinate, so to speak. I know once years ago, and it was a story that I wrote, but it was never published. But it was about a snowman. And I literally felt like I was being stalked by this snowman. His name was Mr. Winterbottom. And it was like occasionally it would just like pop up in my head, and I would get a little piece of the story, a little bit here, a little bit there. And so yeah, sometimes it can take me literally months before I will actually write a word down on paper. I'm
Wow.
very, I don't know, it's just part of my process. I have to, it almost has to just be ready to just burst and tell itself before I, force it. So yeah, so all stories come to me in all different ways. And that's why I tell kids, sometimes you have to be patient, it takes some time. And everyone always wants to know, how long does it take me to write a story? And every story is different. And some come to me, really quickly, and others, really take sometimes even years for the idea to kind of bloom.
I love that. I love that. Well, listeners, we are going to have Kelly's podcast come out next Tuesday or 2 Tuesdays from now. But every Tuesday, we have another creative individual who shares their story here, their journey, and who creates inspiration for those listeners who are either wanting to write a book or get books into their stores, into their classrooms. So thank you so much for your time today, Kelly.
Thank you. I've enjoyed talking to you. It's
Excellent.
been
Have a
great.
great day.